just race right on into visiting with Harley Brown, which
Well, we
this
can go
is
into
this
that
is
too.
a big deal, Harley, to have you on We Talk Art.
Now,
So
when you say a big deal, that still shocks me. My mind is still back at a teenager when I was no big deal. And ever since then, I've never thought of it in those terms. But thank you.
well, I think you are a big deal, and I think everybody's a big deal at some point. You know, we all have our strengths, and
Yeah.
it's good to have your moment of glory, right?
Well,
But
thank you. It is.
anyway, Harley, let's talk about your childhood. You grew up in Moose Jaw, right?
Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And I look back and I look at that as probably, this is my thinking, probably the best time in history and the best place in history. It was the perfect, let's say, middle class, I guess you would say, town where everybody worked hard. Did you know that not having or not working was a vagrancy, which was against the law? And we all worked hard in school, and my parents showed me right from wrong and so on. But here's a slight, no, big difference. My mother had me at the piano. At 7 years old, she started me taking piano lessons. My dad showed me a painting or a drawing that he had done for my mother when they were courting, a painting of Ronald Colman. So at that age of 7, in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, I started learning to play the piano. And I looked at my dad's drawing. This is true. I looked at my dad's drawing and said at that moment, that is what I'm going to do. That inspired me so much. I said, "Whoa, you know." Now, how a 7-year-old mind can think like that, that's kind of interesting in itself. But that held true from grade eight on to, and well, I won't get into a great moment that happened when I was finished grade 12, but a very important moment happened. And, but all throughout school, and this is maybe somebody will make this important to them. I know you said, was I in Moose Jaw, but I'll just throw this in. Uh, I did terribly on every subject except writing, art, and we had a little bit of music in the school. Those I understood, caught on to right away. The art, I was drawing all the time, and the teachers knew it. And they knew that I was going to be an artist. And oftentimes they would, instead of me taking a chemistry class or Latin, they'd give me money to go to a movie if the movie was about an artist or music or something. And I thought I was just dumb because I didn't understand chemistry or history or any another language. And all the other students were understanding it right away. Boom, boom, boom. And so I really thought I didn't have the brains to be anything else. And I thought to myself, boy, I'm lucky. I love art. Anyway, that's my Moose Jaw start.
Well, and then I was reading something, I think, maybe on your website about that. You know, you love doing portraits. You love painting people, drawing people, and you would hang out with the natives, and you would they would pose for you, and you started drawing natives early on.
Absolutely. Right from my teen years, I still was school and so on, but when I was going to art school and that, I would run out to the different reservations, the different land that they owned, and uh, and we became kind of close together. They understood. There is something that later on I won't, I don't need to tell you, but it was a major positive thing that happened with me and the uh, indigenous people, and Um, the school that I went to, uh, they were teaching regular drawings of women and so on and so forth. And I kept doing that and the faces and so on. But they started getting, well, okay, I'm going on and on. Ask me another question.
Well, you after you as a child you lived in Moose Jaw, and then you went to Calgary, right, to art school.
Went to the art school. Yeah. And it was there that amazing thing happened. When I was 19 and I was there, and this still befuddles me. Uh, I was chatting with a friend of mine, and he said, is there anything else you do besides art, Harley? And this is in first year. And I said, well, yeah, I've taken the piano and I've learned to play Beethoven and Mozart and so on. And I actually really got into it with another stunning thing happened with the music. But anyway, I got into music and I told him, please don't tell anybody at the school. And he said, I won't. Well, the next day, he told people at the school, and it was a lunch hour. Now, this was a major turning point in my life. Lunch hour. The students came running over to me where I was sitting down and said, we hear you play the piano, Harley. And I said, what? We heard that you play the piano. We want to hear if you really can. And in the student lunchroom, there was what do you call it? A piano, a regular old piano. They grabbed me by the shoulders, took me over to the piano. Now this is the turning point. I sat down. Now up to this moment, a girl would look at me as if I was a pane of glass. Um, I wasn't noticed by anybody. Well, when I sat down and played the piano, playing a bit of this and that, in a little jazz stride piano, uh, people started circling around the piano and big smiles on their face. Well, I'll cut this right down short. From that day, and after that, they said, Harley, let's go to the bar. I've never had a drink. We went to the bar. They all wanted to be with me. We told stories. I had a drink, two, three. I started getting rambling on. Hey, yeah, man. Well, I went to parties till about when I was 35. And my life went on. I got married. My life went on and get successful, better, 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 better as time went on. But I was the eccentric of all time. From that minute when that piano at the school, that was an unbelievable turning point that I can't even, you'll see them in my confessions book. But anyway, till I was 35, and then another thing happened. But a beautiful thing, they did me a good turn by kicking me out of art school on the fourth year because I wasn't going into what they were showing. And one of the teachers very quietly said to another one, he was behind me watching me because I was doing a facial, a portrait. And he whispered to the other teacher, he does those portraits damn good. And and I heard that, and it was kind of inspiring to hear an actual artist say that. But on the fourth year, I was too much for them, and I was sticking to doing the portraits and figure drawings and that. And they were kind of pushing the art into the Matisse, sort of a way, and they
Mhm.
kicked me out. And many years later, I thanked them for giving me an extra year of real life. Anyway, but a lot of my time, incidentally, with that school, I made a bit of money doing auctions at the Calgary Stampede. And the money that I made there, I sent to the art school that I've never had anything against them. I sent the money to the school for a scholarship, and
Wow.
the scholarship went to the indigenous students, and so we were very close. Now I'm kind of right now. Uh, I'm kind of in a different world, and I don't run out and do those to the different places and so on and so forth. Somebody would say, um, Harley, let's go to Fiji Islands. Man, I couldn't get the tickets fast enough. Off to Fiji for several weeks, or just things like that. Just wild, and I had the family, and I'd have a babysitter come over and watch two babysitters and watch the family, and my wife and I would take off to Russia to go to the museums there. Anyway,
That's great. So when you you went to Fiji then, and then you paid while you were there? How long were you there?
well, went to Fiji, and then we kind of cut that together with me doing a workshop there. And the only models that we could find were the people that lived there would be going through with a mule or a horse or something, and we'd say, "Please, could you pose for us?" And so that turned out to be kind of in a several ways very positive. Australia went there to uh, Sydney and so on to the universities. They would have me go also over the place to do workshops and for fun. I was with six other artists. We were called the Tucson Seven, and these artists were big time artists that illustrated in New York. I don't call them illustrators; I call them artists. And they did posters for the many movies, Gone with the Wind, Doctor Zhivago, and so on. Uh, The Sound of Music. They did the big famous posters, and somehow or other, they all kind of ended up individually in Tucson. And we used to draw together. We decided let's be a group, crazy group of artists. So there was the seven of us, and we would travel everywhere on earth together and loved each other's works, inspired each other, something like that. And something like that means a lot when you're with other artists. And I'll tell you one thing that I didn't learn, it just came naturally. When somebody else would win an award, and the rest of us were happy for that person. And when we won, if it was an award and we lost out on it, forget about it. We had enough confidence in ourselves to know that, uh, you know, somebody else would get it, and then maybe we would one year and somebody else. But right from all the very young age, I never was envious or jealous of any other artist. And I think that comes when you really find yourself, when you're confident with yourself.
Mhm.
And that's oh, and incidentally, after I got out of art school and I, with a couple of other guys, one on the drums, one on the bass, boom, boom, boom. I played the piano in a brothel.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
10 till 2 in the morning, and then we play it till 2, and then the three of us would go over to the Bennett's Cafe in Calgary and have a early breakfast or a late supper, then off to, it was a kind of a job. It was really a job. People coming and going and so on. And it was fun. An experience.
That's great. And so you spent time in England,
Yeah. You
and you
know, I, well, the reason went there was I happened to be going through a newspaper, British newspaper, flipping through, and one of the um, pages, the third page, it had a wacky photograph of an old guy pushing a cart with clothes and stuff dangling from it. And underneath that photograph, it said, Londoners are eccentric. Now, this was during my wild eccentric days that I had accumulated from the age of 19. And I went home and said to my wife, let's move to London because of those three words, Londoners are eccentric. She said, fine. We went to London, sold everything that I owned, sold it, and off to London. And we stayed there for 2 years. The humidity or whatever was started to affect her. So we came back with 2 years. I didn't make much money, and there's several things that happened there that they could make a movie out of. Each one, Twilight Zone especially. But so that was my London thing. I'm sorry, when you ask me a question, I go on and on and on, and I
Well, that's
shouldn't.
good. Now you said there were some stories from London. So now I want to hear a couple of those.
Well, let me narrow it down to, well, there was, okay, I'll try to keep this as fast as I can. We decided to leave. I had literally enough money for a week's worth of food. We had no money. So I decided I'm going to take my pictures downtown to London, Piccadilly, all the different places, and I'm going to somehow get some work to get some money. And I took just getting the pictures down. They all started falling. I had them in a rope, and they fell out of the rope on my way down to the train, and I had to take them back and reframe them within moments. And then I went down again and went down to the center of London, went to this place, that place. Could I work here for a while? Would you buy any of my work? On and on. No, we're not interested. So the last place that I thought, and I kind of, was St. Paul's Cathedral. And I'd heard there was a place there in St. Paul's Cathedral that did prints. And so I went over there to St. Paul's Cathedral, looked at the church, very beautiful. And I looked there at the little place, the store, the office building, and I figured, okay. And I kind of looked up as if, could you give me a hand, dear Lord? And I went into this place, Solomon and Whitehead, and I brought in my pictures. I had 10 of them, and they were framed. And I brought them and put them down. I lined them up against a wall. And Mrs. Butcher came in. I remember her. They said, oh, okay, we'll have a look. They were kind of halfway interested. And okay. And it was getting to be closed down time. And Mrs. Butcher came in, and she walked over, and she saw several of my pictures lined up, and she looked at the first, the second. Oh, I like that one. I like that one too. Okay, we're going to take that one, and we'll take that one. Yeah, okay. Oh, and that one too. We'll take that. Okay. And Mr. Brown, we'd like to make prints of those. Would that be okay? Limited editions? Oh, yes. I said, yes. And Mrs. Butcher said, okay, I'll give you a cashier's check. And Joe, bring over the book. I'm going to write him out a check. And she wrote me out a check. And I think, if I can remember exactly, it was for £500. In those days, I think a pound was 3, 4, 5. I can't remember. It was quite a bit of money, each pound. She wrote me out a check. At this point, I was ready to faint. I got all the rest of the pictures together. I thanked her beyond thanks. And I got out and I carried the other pictures with me, got on a bus, and then got over to the train. And I remember getting on the train and putting the pictures down on the corner, and people were going home from work. from work, and I remember humming and singing, "Down Britannia, Britannia rules the waves." And went on like that, and the other people on the train started humming with me. I would just felt so uplifted that now my life had turned around. And thank you, Mrs. Butcher. I still thank you, Mrs. Butcher. I went home, and my wife had just taken a bunch of my velours. That's what I did on velour. Taken my velour work and gone down, and the uh, guy that worked in the uh, one of the shops in the little shopping center loved my works. He bought one. Da, 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 da. I walked in the door. She had this handful of pounds, threw them up in the air, and they all took it. And I thought, holy mackerel! Well, we, I mean, that somehow or other, my prayers. So I had the 500. She had several hundred there. We phoned up Canard Lines and got tickets from Southampton to Montreal within, I can't remember how the length of time. Now this is 1966. We went there in 64 and left in 66. And then my career, we stopped in Montreal. I have relatives there, and then went over to Calgary. And there was a guy that heard I was in town, and he had a shop in the shopping center that was empty, and he heard about me. He said, "Harley, you can have them for nothing. Just put your pictures up." And that's when my career started slipping upwards. Still had a lot of angles to fix, and I was still in my eccentric days. Remember, I was eccentric from 19 years old to 35. But the beauty of that was I was down in the deepest, but I kept saying, okay, as an artist, you never give up. You don't. You plain do not give up. And that was my passion from the ages 7 to all the things that happened in between time. Many, many. And my love of art, music was kind of put a bit behind. My love of art was so phenomenal that got me through good, well, obviously good, medium, bad times. Sorry.
That's fantastic. I wanted to ask you too, Harley. Your father was an artist. Was he a portrait artist, or did he do landscapes, or both? Or
He did people. He did kind of funny things. The kind you see, not cartoons, but they be real people doing things. Uh, like the one he did of Ronald Coleman it was a profile. Oh, wow. I saw other ones of his, but I saw this profile of Ronald Coleman, and uh, and it's in my book, and the way it looked, the shape of his head against the background, he did those kind of things, and he did drawings of people doing funny things and so on. So all of these things started seeping into my head because I hadn't. Then I started looking at Rembrandt's. That kind of got me to the next stage of looking at Rembrandt's and Renoir and so on and so forth. But he did mostly figures, so that I'm sure that had a lot to do with my loving to do figures and faces.
and then you made mention about something in grade 12. Something happened that was maybe a launch into the arts or whatever. But you had something that happened in grade 12.
Well, it was that was okay. What happened in grade 12 took a few steps further. I was starting to get really involved, wanting to be an artist, but had a job that I got after grade 12. I figured that, well, we're supposed to, and I got a job doing windows for the Hudson's Bay. And I worked there for a little while. And my dad, he sat me down in the living room and he brought a chair out, sat the chair in front, and he sat down on the chair. And he said, Harley, my dear Harley, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to make up your mind, and I'm going to give you a choice. Yeah. He said, you have two things to decide on. Number one, you can keep working, doing these, dressing up the windows in the bay. Number one, but I'm going to charge you rent here and so on. So just be aware of that. He said, choice number two, you can go up to the North Hill where it is, and you can stay here with us and go back and forth. You can go to the art college and you can go there for 4 years, rent free, all the food you want to eat. Make your choice. You got 5 minutes. It took me half a second.
Good, good choice.
Yeah, good choice. So I went to work the next day and I told the boss, I said, Ed, I've decided I'm going to go to art school. I'm going to be an artist, and that's all there is to it. And Ed said to me, you're done. You're done. Artists don't make a living. You won't make any money, and you'll be coming back to beg for your job, but it won't be waiting for you. I said, Ed, bye bye. And that day I went up. I worked for till the end of the week, but I went up to the art school and signed in. And all of a sudden, there was something that happened within my brain and body and soul. Somehow I started floating and I couldn't understand. You know, maybe it's like anybody finding something that really is ready to make them blossom. And uh,
You had a direction.
there was absolute direction, absolute direction. And I signed in and started art class. And I remember Mr. Parrott came in the first day of, I never had anything like this happen. He came in, when the professor came in, he talked about history or mathematics on the blackboard. Mr. Parrott came in and he was so good at talking about art. He talked for 2 hours about art and he had us just so glad that we were there in the first year, first day of the art school. And I have to say that even though they did release me on my fourth year, that school had a great amount to do with what happened to me the years after. There was so much that they taught. And that was what happened after grade 12. It was a major, major deal.
So did you ever run into Ed after that?
No, I didn't. I've one of the guys that worked with him took over the business. He didn't feel too good and he was kind of getting old. And no, I wish that I had, at least gotten a hold of him, but I think he went back to uh, the town that he was raised in or something like that. But the guy that took over, Horst, uh, Horst, um, I chatted with him and he was so happy for me. He took over the business. And
Oh,
there's a
good.
lot of people in my life that knew me from before and now, and everybody was happy. My dad was beyond happy. And my mother, she was the one that got me on the piano, my dad in the art. And they were so thrilled. All my relatives, every one of them said that that's what Harley needs is art.
I think that's so wonderful when your family or anybody's family can embrace someone's goal to be in the
Yeah,
art, to and not
very,
not say, oh well, you can do your art, but you got to get a real job.
Exactly, exactly. And a lot of parents, and I bless all parents, thank you, all parents. They do look at that way. I'm sure that they think that the child, the young one who went through all the years of grade 9, 10, 11, 12, that all of those years in a way would be wasted, that they're going to be doing pretty pictures. And well, blessings. And all of the students that were in their class with me, I'm sure that their parents were as thrilled with them, because all of them lived from home, and we all kind of looked at each other every once in a while. Once in a while, they would show an abstract. This is when New York, the New York bunch of abstract artists started getting hot after the war years. And once in a while, they would show us one of theirs. And we had not seen any, but they would show with a big slash here and there, de Kooning and Jasper Johns. And we'd look at them and look at each other. Is this where we're going? You know, but we understood right away that you have different avenues, journeys in art. Mine was portraits and figures and portraits. Very good friend of mine went into landscapes. Phenomenal landscape artist, unbelievable. Uh, Duma, and there's a lot of people that there was they somehow they got into the art and uh, never went further. Sadly, because they were so excited. And then it really is, when you want to be an artist, it really is one of those things where you have to set logic aside and just become a merry, happy, full of joy artist. And that's what I was. And then I quit drinking. I started drinking that day that they had me play the piano. I stopped drinking because of various very dramatic reasons. And the beauty of that was of stopping drinking. I mean, I stopped, boom, like that within a 5-minute period, because I saw the harm that it was doing to me. But there's one thing that I was no longer invited to parties because I became a bore. And I remember people saying, God, whatever happened to Harley? He's become such a bore. Because I would sit down at parties and drink coffee. And they would talk to me and I'd say, oh, I had a good day. The old days, if they talked to me, I'd come up with something. And so I was no longer invited to parties. And that meant, number one, I had lots of time to push my art. And oddly enough, people, certain individuals by accident, uh, got a hold of me for whatever reason, and I started getting involved. Bob Lockheed, major artist, phoned me up. He said, accidentally saw one of my pictures in a window. He liked it. He phoned me up out of the blue, and I was kind of wondering what to do, that night. And he phoned up and he said, hi, this is Robert Lockheed. And I stood up, attention. And he said, Harley, I saw some of your art, or one of your art pieces. I said, I want you to put in a picture in a particular art show. And and it was a major art deal. And also he said, we're all getting together in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, and we're going to paint animals. And I want you to come along for that. We'd be out there for 2 weeks or so. So all of a sudden, things like that happened. Other things that you wouldn't believe happened. Uh, and well, it was just oh, I remember now. Clint Eastwood. These things would happen. Clint Eastwood once said, he was talking to Larry King, and Larry King said, you know, Mr. Eastwood, tell me if accidental things, if coincidences happen to you that helped you with your career, um, did a lot of those happen to you? And Clint Eastwood said, absolutely. A lot of good coincidences happened. He said, but you better be prepared when they do. Which to
That's
me,
right.
golden words. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good words to live by for an artist, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because a lot of, uh, I've good percentage of my life was accidental. Doing Ronald Reagan's portrait for his second inauguration, it was because I happened to be lost down a street in Mexico, in San Miguel de Allende, and I was lost. And a car came by and said, "Hey, you look lost." I said, "Yeah." Well, it turned out that people in the car were involved with the reelection of a committee of Ronald Reagan, and they saw my art, da 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 da, and said, "We want you to do a portrait of President Reagan." And I did, went to the inaugural ball. But that's the kind of thing. Going down a street, lost in a street in San Miguel, Mexico. Can you beat that?
nope, nope.
That's a hard one. But I got a lot just like that. But like he said, you better be prepared if they're going
Yeah,
to happen. Yeah.
that's true. Um, were you? Oh, Pam was just asking about the fact that you were a member of the Tucson Seven. How did that happen?
That was the Tucson Seven were the other artists that came from the East when illustrations were starting to teeter down a little bit. And they were the ones that did illustrations for magazines, magazine covers, movie posters, like I said, for movies and that. And we all kind of, for some reason or other, centered into uh, Tucson, and because also we were the same gallery there, Settlers West, and that was when he was starting out, and uh, we just liked being with each other. We enjoyed being together, and they were the ones that, if one of them won something or whatever happened, we were happy for that person. We were happy for each other all the time, 100% of the time. However, good things happened, and they would. These were phenomenal artists, and for me, all of these artists, incidentally, I was the youngest. All of these artists were heroes of mine when I was going to art school. How do you like that?
That's great. You're
Well,
not you're now in the club.
in the club, it'd be like if I was hanging around and all of a sudden, I was going to say Beethoven, Rembrandt came along and we started having coffee together, and Rembrandt and I became old buddies. It's just with these individuals, you're right. With these individuals, I learned so much, not about art only, but about life and the life of an artist. We all together combined, and we traveled the world together. We would there's a town outside of Tucson, old Tucson, where they made movies with Clint Eastwood. John Wayne was there for many movies, making movies there. We'd go out there and do drawings of the old buildings and so on and so forth. We'd take off. Uh, Howard would phone up, or Dick Briers. Dick Briers was one of the members, and he did drawings of women on the nose cones of bombers in the Second World War. uh, they would phone up and say, "Let's do something or other." We'd do it unless we had a big show that we had to complete. But that was one of my. When I look back, I think of how lucky can a guy get, or a woman, an artist get, than to be with that the most wonderful bunch of friends you could possibly have. And I miss them all. Howard's still alive. I hate saying that. And I mean, I don't like to say still, we all end up. And but it was so wonderful. And many of the other artists in these art organizations I was in, many of the organizations, and the artists that were there, I knew so many of them, and big, wonderful. And every time, there was not one, I tell you, there was not one artist, guys and gals, not one that had anything to do with them that got on my nerves. We were all for each other. Really.
Yeah.
In a family, we're like family. Even ones Even if somebody didn't know me personally would come, oh, hi Harley, meet for the first time. And right away we become friends because we saw each other's work, and that kind of was a connection.
Yeah. It's a strong bond, I think. Now,
Oh, absolutely.
so Harley, who is Howard?
Howard Turpning.
Yeah, he's another great artist with figures as well as landscape. I mean,
Oh,
incredible work too.
incredible. I love, he was working on one piece, and he had a figure there and a figure here, and the figure was quite close, maybe. And he said, that's too close. That he said, I'm going to have to. What he did was he took that figure, it was finished painting. He took it out and moved the figure back prospectively. That's the kind of artists they, and the finished, when with all the artists, and he repainted it further on, just a little bit back, but he needed. That's the kind of, not, it's not perfection, it's to get it right. And a
Hmm.
lot of artists, all of those artists, one, Tom Hill, did watercolors. Can you believe this? He would take his easel downtown. We used to stay in Oaxaca a lot, and he'd take it down to the city center, put up the easel, put up the paper, watercolors to the side there, brush water and all that, and he would paint watercolor the scene in front of him, complex buildings, churches, and even a few quick sketches of the people. When you saw that, a lot of us would just stand around and watch him as he laid things out. Everything was just absolutely worked, rhymed, color, shape, design. One artist, I last time I ever saw him, he was very ill, and I remember seeing him. We talked about art and so on, and I went to leave, and he came out to the porch with me, and I walked down to the car, and I said, do you have one word for me to take with me? And he didn't hesitate. He said, design. And he is so right. The reason you look at any painting, even an abstract, incidentally, but when you look at a painting, a lot of people can do the face right and this right, even the color kind of right. But the thing that would make your eyes go whoop like that is the design, and or composition, if you want. And I think, and he's right, drawing is good. I learned to draw, and I can draw fairly well. And but when you do just a face alone and nothing else, just a face, it doesn't have the dramatic design that a painting needs to have. It shows you can do the eyes, nose, and so on. But putting in the background and the color, I think that the color, you can start to really play with color even more so if you understand design. And most paintings, another important thing about a painting is it should either be, the majority of it should be warm or the majority of it should be cool. In other words, like the French Impressionists, there's this cool and they'd have maybe a warm barn or something. They'd have some warm. But if they ever had equal warm and cool, the design was the thing that brought it out. Uh, a painting also should have a dominant value. It should not be equally light and dark. It should be or middle. mid value. These are things that I've learned over the many years of design. Color is good, but it will not work unless the value and design work. Values. I think values, which is light to dark, and when you're doing a face, don't put every little detail in. Put in the main things. And when I look at my face there, all of that's about the same value. Then there's lighter ones here and there, then the dark. Less detail in the dark areas. Dark areas do not want a lot of detail. And but working, for instance, my head, if you look at there and this thing sticking out behind me, terrible design. Another word there. So you want, a lot of times I'll do angles right there, light here, dark there against my head. Maybe on the dark side, I'll put in medium value, uh, maybe not too bright or not too rich in color. It's all varies. If you look at my art, you'll see some of that. And maybe further on back, well, you know, like anybody, I'm human and far from perfect. But at least I understand after all these years, like when you learn to speak the language, you learn to walk, everything is learned step by step, you know.
Well, isn't that true? The saying, I don't know who said it now, but value does all the work and color gets the glory.
You're right about that. Absolutely. Absolutely, that's true. It does get a lot of glory. Oh, look at the color, you know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fantastic color.
but
But yeah,
but
but you gotta have, but you have the design has to be there as well. Your composition, of course.
yeah, and up and down is stable. Angles give movement, even if something is still, even if a person just sitting there like that. Uh, angles like that give movement, even if it's stable, like me. It gives it a visual movement, not movement of the head, but movement of the design.
Right.
Whereas this, boom, boom, well, hip, shoulders, but well, there you are.
Yeah. Right. So Harley, but if you were going to give some advice to a new artist, a young artist, what would you tell them?
Well, of course, there's going to be some times where you don't sell, and I've had that, no sales. Uh, to really never give up that, because that hope. Don't wait until you're retired. A lot of people wait till they're retired, and then I had a lot of that in my workshop. Uh, just keep at it. There comes a time, yeah, I know, and I do understand, where you're not making any money and you've got a family. And then you do it, and then but you keep in your art and keep developing it. And every once in a while, send one off to a gallery. A lot of people I know have done that, and then they get better and better. Always keep art number one, if it's number one. With me, when I saw that painting of my drawing of my dad, colored watercolor that my dad did, I never had any doubt that that's what I was going to do. And it has to be a very powerful thing inside you. Just
Yes.
yeah, it has to be just take. It has to take you over. Ooh, was that me?
So Harley, yeah, you work in oils and pastels, and I imagine other mediums as well. Is pastel your favorite?
Yeah, I start off with of course, pencil and charcoal and Conte, and then I went into oil because I thought you're supposed to paint. You're supposed to be, if you're an artist, you'd work with oils, and I did a lot of oil work, portraits, a lot of portraits, and then I just for fun I picked up a cheap set of pastel, maybe 20 colors, and sat it down, put paper up on the easel, the board, and I got a mid-tone, and I started to move it with my hand on the paper. At that very moment, I became a pastel artist. I said, that is it. And it just everything it laid it down. I didn't have to mix the color. I'd look for another color, just everything. Just and from that moment on, I did pastel, and the oil paintings were put to the side. I still have done a few portraits that people want, but I tell you, it it's it when the pastel came to me, pastel's magical, and it's a little side thing. It's not important, maybe, but you can send it off the day that you finish it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the only downside, you got to put it under glass. You got to
Glass,
protect it.
and the glass is raised a bit, so it doesn't touch the pastel with a board, or what do they call, liner?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's great. If you and all of the people that you have done portraits of, do you do your portraits live, or are they from photo, or both?
A lot. At first, they were mostly from life. Incidentally, when I started out, here's another thing. When I started out, when they kicked me out of art school, I knew that I had to make my living as an artist. So I got a peddler's license, and the next day I started walking door to door, knocking on doors, and like you're selling magazines and
Encyclopedias.
yeah, exactly. And I would knock on the door, and they'd open up. Hi, I'm an art student of the. That I was kicked up, but I didn't say that. I'm an art student for about the art school up there, and I'd point, and they'd look, and but I'm doing portraits of people, and I'm from life, and I would do portraits for you and your family, or you, and my um, profiles would be $1. Face on would be $5. Da da da. 35 doors slammed on my face until finally this one woman who had a little boy there, and she said, come in and do the portrait of Johnny here. And I did his profile. She gave me $1. And somehow or other, then things got a little better, a little better. And then somebody would say to their neighbor, hey, you should get this guy to, and then it started getting better. Um, Now, what was the question you, I just wanted to throw that in as a starter, and
Well, yeah,
no, no dealer wanted my art. They would guide me out, they'd shake my hand and pull me out the door.
I asked, I think, about what if you did mostly from life or from photos,
Yeah,
and
I did. I'm sorry.
oh, no, and then I was going to say, and so then tell us, if you will, some of your favorites and some of your most famous people that you worked with
Oh,
and painted.
well, there's one that I shan't. Um, they've made movies of this guy, but I can't. I have to hold that. I've done people like, not from life, Marilyn Monroe, Betty Page, Clint Eastwood, um, a great amount of the Hollywood stars, and I did covers. Maybe one day we'll show them covers for horror magazine, about 20 or 25 covers with Dracula, Frankenstein, so on. But a lot of my first portraits were from life. Those were commission portraits. Then, of course, I did many of the movie stars, Sophia Loren, and I had to work from photographs, but I get some together and so on and so forth. But I was certainly, after all the training I did with myself, I would make them look like they were done from life. There was one portrait I won't give you too many details. Uh, I happen to know this right person in London. And this person said that they want for the wall of their community, whatever it was, a portrait of Winston Churchill. Now, you've heard of him.
Yeah.
They wanted me to do his portrait. And they said, you go down, was it Chartwell or some, I can't remember. You go down there and you look at him, and you'll also, we want you to work from uh, photographs as well, but I want you to meet him. And I figured to go down to meet one of the most famous men in history. Sadly, I was on my way. Sadly, he passed away. But the fact that I had such people in my, I can name names uh, of people that you would well know, a lot in the movie business. Um, my goodness. Uh, but most of the famous people, of course, were done with photographs. Sometimes it would be an older star, and I would do that star in a younger time.
Hmm.
And but many cases where somebody's uncle or somebody had passed away and they wanted to have, and I'd work from photographs. So, but I started out doing from life, and that helped me so that when I do see a photograph, I see life. I see the life of that person, and in 3 dimension, and I almost like that person sitting in front of me, and and I and it's just the same kind of feeling with my hand moving around, starting very simple, you know, the shadows. I would put down on the paper a mid-tone, like right here, and then on top of that, I'd rub it in so that it was right into the paper, a mid-tone, and then I would start to put in shapes of the eye, very simple shapes, and down the cheeks and so on the side of the face. And I wouldn't get into the highlights yet. I would do that as it went further. But I'd look for all these things. And you don't overdo it or underdo it. I would. But once in a while, you may push it, but you better darn well push it aesthetically right. And that comes with experience. So in other words, a lot of people, a lot of artists will put highlight, highlight, highlight all over about the same, but there's a slight difference on the, where the head is turned up there and where it's not turned up to the light, and
Hmm.
peak and so on. A lot of people will have a wonderful painting, but I think a lot of them ruin it by putting too much highlights or too much light. They'll put the same light there as they do there. And, it's values, like I say, values and shapes are so, so important, especially when you're starting it out. And then you can put in some details, but you'd have to know when to stop with the details, not overdo them. But unless you're doing a portrait, a commissioned portrait, then you got to make it look. When I did that portrait of Ronald Reagan, I tried to, because this was important and it was going to be seen by everybody, I tried to make it, he had a kind of a bit of a crooked grin and so on and so forth. Did a few things and I was finished. And I looked at it, didn't look like him. So I somehow or other, my hand went, and it was only a few more days. We had to fly down to the inauguration, and my hand went up, and I ripped it in two. And for the next 24, 48, whatever it is, hours, I worked on it, and I put in all his character bits of his face, which were very, I mean, great. His smile and so on, great moment, things of humanity and character on his face, and it looked just like him. They loved it down there, and so you don't go for perfection. Try to straighten the face out to make it look better. You do what you see, uh, and also I don't work from my imagination. If I, you, there's nobody I know that can make even draw a rock right with the light and shadow and the reflected light and so on. Don't fake anything in the head. It's not like I'm trying to be a camera, but uh, nature hands this to us, and you should do what nature says, but you can't help it, but your own technique comes through. So, in other words, I don't say, well, I better do the nose this way or that way. Do what you see, and your own approach will come through, but it'll also come through like somebody is doing Hamlet or something. You say the same words, but with your expression. When you play Rachmaninoff's Concerto Number 2, it's the same notes by everybody, but each person, Horowitz, whoever, plays it differently. The same words. And the same with doing a portrait. I've often had the same class, well, where there would be 20 artists, and each artist would get it right to a certain extent, but they had their own style approach to it. So don't worry about your approach will come through, especially as time goes on and confidence happens. It took me happily years, not like, oh boy, am I ever going to make it? No, I just was too busy to worry.
Yeah. Um, Chris just said that she loved your book, Eternal Truths book. And then she asked, can you suggest a way to get better with accuracy and proportion?
You have to just take a lot of time. I know a lot of people trace from the I think in a case like that, and I've seen it with other artists, professional, that you really, if it's a commission portrait, if it's not, um, just make sure that if the head is turned, to make sure that the mouth is not as wide on that side and nose that side. You know, I okay. I do not look at a head. I don't know the anatomy of a head, but I know the shapes. I don't know anything about anatomy. I think I'll say it. I'm a master of shapes, and the shapes that I see, um, what what do I have here? No, I won't. Oh, incidentally, does anybody there know? What I'm saying is the shapes are. Think in terms of shapes, uh, not an eyebrow and that, because you don't put in an eyebrow. You put a shape of that against inside there with the eye and the.
Right.
It's all done. It's all done with the shapes. Just think shapes and value. And what do for fun? Go through a magazine and look for a photograph in the magazine that has shapes of the face and practice that. Uh, I do it just for the fun of it. When I'm going to sleep or when I'm watching TV, I'll get down there, and I just have such great fun in bringing to life what I see on that photograph. And also, I use, of course, I get a pencil there and I look, okay, how far down does that nose go? And in comparison to where the eye goes there, and so on. And how far down does the nose go? And then right in there, what if I draw up, what part of the eye does that hit? What part of the eye? And I draw down there, what part of the mouth? Right there. And how far is it from the nose to the mouth? And how far is the nose to the bottom of the whiskers? It could be down there to up there to the high there. So that's one way of looking at it. Oh, can I throw this one thing in? Oh, if
Sure.
okay, if you have more questions about that, about exacting.
Well, I
The
think that's super good advice. It's about shapes.
Can I throw this in
Sure.
19, if you don't mind? In 1971, that's when I was getting going. Uh, I was asked by a radio station, CFAC, to do a portrait. Have you ever heard of Anne Murray,
Mhm,
the singer?
mhm.
Do you know what happened there? Okay. Okay. They said, Anne Murray's coming to town. She's going to be at the Jubilee Auditorium in Calgary. We want you to do a portrait of her and to present it to her on stage. Now, that's when I was nobody. I was less than nobody. And I said, whoa, yeah. Because she was big. She had just finished doing Snowbird and a number of other songs and just took over the wonderfully, uh, with such talent. And I said, I will. So I did a portrait of her from a photograph, and I'll show you it. It was done in 1971, but there's an ending to, not an ending, but there's a thing that goes very interesting to this. I'll show you right here.
There's more to the story.
More story.
There's the portrait I did.
Wow.
Is it reflecting bad or is it okay?
Nope, I can see it.
Okay. Now that's the portrait I did over in 1971. It's an oil. Okay. There she is. Okay. In the year 2025, she wanted to use that portrait for her record cover.
Nice.
She just put out a record, and that now, and it's got this, and she signed that for me. But and but she, and I went into tears when I saw her signature
Wow. That
here.
what an honor.
But isn't it though? After what, 54 years, is it 54 years using one of my paintings from way back then? And that is, I can't, and I listen to her music all the time, and I did then all the time. And so things like that, are never gonna, you never dream of them happening. But that floored me when they said we'd like to use, and what's a guy gonna say? Yes, you can use it.
You're not gonna say, well, I'll think about that for a day or two.
Yeah, that, yeah. Well, anyway, I thought I'd throw that in
That's great,
because
Harley.
because it was a great moment in my life. Truly a great, great moment. To do it in the first place, and then to have her, Anne Murray, to have Anne Murray want to have that same portrait for her cover now. And it's a great, I'm telling you, it's a lot of songs people haven't heard before. It's a great record. The music in it is just unbelievable. So I listen to it all the time.
That's great.
She's one of my heroes. And anyway,
That's
so
wonderful.
are we?
So Harley, we're just a little past 2 o'clock my time. I'm in Mountain Time, so 1 o'clock your time. Is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share
Oh,
with
wow.
the group, or?
Well, if you got an extra hour.
Well,
No.
sure.
Um, I think that there is nothing I can imagine more heartful. All of my friends lived good, long, happy, brain-filled lives up in their upper 90s. Their minds, because they kept with their art, they were happy from the days when they weren't making any money, and they always had hope, but never to let yourself uh, fall back in doubt. And always, every day, do at least, even when you're on a holiday or something, have a sketchbook and do a drawing in it to keep the brain visual thing working with your hand. I've done every day of my life. I've done 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, 5-minute sketch, whatever. Draw your foot. Never let that dream escape. And I mean, that's easy to say, but know that many artists have followed that rule. And even if you're working for, found yourself having to work and family, to keep with the art, because the art and the music, whatever you're doing, the art will start to find its way. It will 100% guarantee it will find its way as you do it, and your confidence and your approach will get stronger and stronger. And I promise you, and I do mean this, if you have that, and I know that most people watching this have that strength to keep it going and not stopping. Even those who are 80 years old, I've had some students that were 80 starting. But if you're 25, 30, 45, whatever, 50, just keep on doing it. And being in a gallery doesn't mean that now you're an artist. Being an artist means you're being an artist. And I know of many people who are doing another job and their drawings are fabulous. The one day the magic will happen when somebody will see what you have. As you said yourself and found yourself, a lot of magical things happen to me doing such things in my art world. So I say to those people out there who are wonderfully thinking that their life is art, don't let that thought escape you. And I don't have to say that. I don't need to have to say to you, now you listen to me. I know that you already know that you're not going to let it escape you. And know that for sure your turn will come when you enter that great world, and it takes over. It literally takes over in a good, positive, happy way. Joy, joy, joy.
Yes. Well, Harley, has been really delightful. I hope maybe we can do this again sometime and we can hear more stories and words of wisdom, if you would like. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I thank you so much for your time, and people are saying thank you. Linda says thank you. Carol said thank you. It goes on and on. So anyway, you take great care, and it was a pleasure to visit with you.
I thank people for listening to my rambling, and most of us artists are in our studio. We don't get out and talk too much, and so getting out and talking with you and with the artists here with me, to me it's a joy.
Good. Thank
you, Harley. We are planning to have Harley join us in 2026. He's agreed to do a presentation talking a little bit more about his art. So watch your calendars for that. And thank you so much, Harley. Thank you, Bonnie, for doing a fabulous job.
Well, thank you for being with me, and thank all the artists out there. You have my blessing, and you will make it. I have that sense. You're with the right people, and it's going to work.
Thanks, Harley. And for everybody, we have a We Talk Art coming up in January with Colette Odious Smith, and so that'll be a fun We Talk session. And we've got a great lineup for next year. So you guys take care. Have a wonderful holiday season, and thanks again.
You're welcome. Thanks, Harley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.